Jonathan Ochom, your host, and today we are discussing with Mercy Grace Munduru from Action Aid Uganda, to understand the effects of COVID-19 on women's rights. Mercy, welcome back to our last segment
Thank you.
of the show.
Thank you.
So we ended at a point when we were discussing the sort of what government did, and you painted a fairly sad picture, or perhaps a very sad picture actually of the situation. And I would want to know, don't you think there are a couple of things that could have worked well, that you think maybe government did well, that intervention in as far as protecting women's rights is concerned, and the positive, that we can report?
Well, because you have asked, I will now. That was a joke. I think there were also, there were some wins, I must say, in certain areas. I remember after advocacy, government did take up that were targeted, were women, within families, both in the urban and rural areas. And for that, I would like to commend the state, and also the fact that the police was able to continuously give an update on the issue of gender-based violence. A lot of the information we're able to receive up to that point came from the police, who were in direct contact with different sections of society when civil society could not function. Heightened advocacy around issues of women's rights and COVID. So yeah.
Okay. It's always important to give credit, like you said. Mercy, COVID is here now. We have no idea when it will go. Worst case scenario could get another pandemic or any other disaster like this, say in 5-10 years. We hope it doesn't happen, but worst case scenario, it could happen. And I'm sort of anxious to know if we got ourselves in a similar situation, what are those pointers you give to government of Uganda? Say, okay, to protect women's rights under extraordinary times like this, these are my 1, 2, 3, 4 bullet points that you think we should think about in future if we have to continue dealing.
I must say we're in that future. Right now we're still battling COVID-19.
Yes,
the fact that we're anticipating a third wave, but we're also still seeing cases of COVID, especially the second wave in our country. So I still think we're partially still in that COVID mode. But ultimately, from the first lockdown to now, there are so many lessons for us to learn. Yes. The first is for us to appreciate the fact that these inequalities do exist. And that unique situations like COVID-19 pandemic just deepen these inequalities. And COVID-19 for me also was a way to measure how much we've done as people interested in promoting women's rights. How far have we gone in curing this issue? Because the way it manifested in these uncertain times was quite different from what we ordinarily already know. Many of us are always out of our homes, so we do not pay attention to so many things in the same space, and we started to see different manifestations. It presented the reality of inequality, the unpaid care work that we always speak about in different spaces. So I think we need to have a proper policy around pandemics, and especially pandemic response, because what this does is it then streamlines the different actions by the state, by the non-state actors, by the private sector, for us to be able to prepare and respond when we are caught in a situation where we must perhaps implement certain restrictions. Because if we do not have guidelines, we will implement the restrictions, but we may end up contributing to the problem. There's a bigger problem beyond COVID-19 and responding to it. You may respond to COVID-19 and end up seeing an upsurge in the number of deaths from domestic violence. So it's very important for us to have that national level policy guideline, because this is not the first pandemic. We may be battling COVID-19, but there could be another pandemic more serious than COVID-19, God forbid, but it could happen. But if it does, then what happens, what have we learned in terms of policy. That policy would guide our actions, and it would guide what the state can do and what steps they should take, right from assembling a task force to the kind of interventions, to the kind of resources that are allocated. But also beyond this, one of the key learnings is the issue of gender responsive public service. How accessible are services?
That's a good concept.
Exactly.
Yeah.
How accessible are services? Health, education, and all of this, how accessible are they? What are the inequalities that exist?
In those sectors.
Because there are certain communities where people could not access health facilities. Remember, you cannot use bikes, you cannot drive cars, and you're stuck. The nearest health center to you is kilometers away. So what happens? These are the realities. And in the condition in which a woman could be, how would they then access such a service?
Even if they allowed bikes, how many women can ride bikes?
Exactly. Exactly. So the issue of gender responsive public service is very important. We must ensure that in the services, the public services that the state provides, that we're gender responsive. That is very, very important. And it's a key development indicator, by the way, because the majority of our population in awareness creation around issues of gender. I know it's a topic that people run away. When you tell people you're a feminist or a promoter of women's rights, they look at you like a problem. But these are realities. That is why we are where we are. That is why people are poor. This is the issue. Because if as a woman I spend my productive hours doing unpaid care work, then I am a driver of poverty in your home. Yeah. So those are conversations we must start having, because if we become conscious about these facts, that means within the homestead we're able to enable our girls have time to study. We're able to reduce the burden of women by sharing roles at home and ensuring that the burden is not entirely resting on one. But also we need to enhance our GBV response, because as I speak we have only about 13 shelters. And how many districts do we have? Over 130.
Yeah, and still counting.
And still counting. And still counting, over 100. But you have 13 GBV shelters. So
by the
what
government of
happens?
Uganda, or those
Well, right now they're being run by the development agencies, though in partnership with the state. But the funding for it really is from development partners.
13.
Yes, they're 13. So that is a big problem, right? That's a very big problem, because that means in very many places where these issues are happening, women do not have where to go. The police, the way it is structured now, does not have space to shelter women who have been abused or children who have been abused in their homes. I spoke about incest. When a child has been abused in their home, you're supposed to find alternative space. But now if a police station does not have that, in a story happened where a child was rescued during COVID, had run away from home, and so they brought this child to a particular police post, and they didn't have where to keep the child. So there was a vehicle outside where they tried to cushion, the child as they look for alternative space. The child escaped and was discovered dead. So that is just one of the examples that sometimes children run away from abuse, but they don't have where to go. So we must invest in response mechanisms so that women have where to go, because ultimately for me women are a development issue, that we cannot speak about reducing poverty, we cannot speak about progress as a country when the majority of your population remains disempowered or remains at that level at which they are uneducated, poor, and they cannot fend for their families. For me that is a big question. So it must be at the heart of the work of government, but also development partners as well. Yeah.
I mean, I'm looking at you and, visualizing a future Minister of Gender, Labor and Social Development.
I can be a serious one. And by the way, that ministry, if you look at how much resource is being allocated to the different ministries, it's among the least. What does that show you about our priorities?
Mercy, so many issues to talk, perhaps not so much time to dissect all of them. But I think for viewers, the key takeaways from Mercy today is that protecting women's rights is our core responsibility. It belongs to government, but also to us as individuals. But more importantly, for the government of Uganda, you have the mandate of investing in putting in place the necessary infrastructure to protect women's rights. Is it putting in place GBV shelters? Is it about putting in place good laws and everything? All those things that Mercy has explained today highlight the need for government to be cautious, gender responsive, and to think about vulnerable sections of our community when are designing interventions in tough times like this we find ourselves in because of COVID-19. With that, viewers, we've come to the end of today's episode of You and the Law, the COVID edition. I've been your host, Jonathan Ochom. Next week, we'll discuss yet another human right which has been affected by the virus. For now, it's a bye. COVID-19 came and disorganized our economy, brought our health system to its knees, and along the way, affected our rights significantly. This is You and the Law, the COVID edition, here on House of Talent Television. My name is Jonathan Ochom, your host.
Have 45, let's say, million people, whose GDP per capita is 860,000. No, 860 USD.
Yes.
So when we put it in Uganda shillings, the average guy in Uganda gets like 120,000 per month.
Yes.
And you know that's the money you pay your maids. Or people, many people, that's the money they pay.
Yeah.
So the guys who calculate GDP are not just talking, GDP per capita are not just talking things from the air. They really sit down and calculate, and it makes sense for me. So I'm like, that's when I studied Monaco, it gave me courage that I don't need 100,000 people to make Africa better. You need just a few thousands to look in the right direction, very inspired, very knowledgeable, to get the continent forward. That's numbers.
But how are the families doing in the lockdown?
If we are Bijanjalo, therefore we know we are raising Chijanjalo. If we are Muvule, we shouldn't expect
to raise
eucalyptus. So it's very important for your family to have an identity, which I have called vision. Now, in the absence of that, if you just have a female and a male together producing kids, I wouldn't define that as family.
So I was listening to a gentleman who I said, even in this lockdown, when the locker's down, you go back to your family. At home. All right? When schools are closed, you don't go to the dormitory, you go back to your family.
You cannot create anything without purpose, without something that you feel. And therefore, when God calls you as a man, he gives you a vision. And when he gives you a vision, it's important that you raise caretakers of that vision to whatever generations must come. And I think that's the role of the man in a family. And that's the importance of family to God.
But at least we are guaranteed when they choose to get married, their wives will be our daughters. And that's what we live for. We are raising them up to be able to be independent, to flourish in the way that God has called them to be.
But the church did not prepare people to know who they are. So they are meeting the I, but the voice of the we, as according to the word of God, we are Christians, is louder than the I that actually God speaks to through revelation.
Every family needs bonding. Naturally, when a baby is born, they put the baby on the mother. There is that bonding. For us men, our involvement in the life of this little child is part of our bonding. Later on in life, there are other things we do together which bring bonding.
The family context now is how do we help them to know who they are? That man in there, who is he? All the time he's been running to clubs. When there's time for him to meet himself, he runs to social media, he runs to work. But now he's caught up in one space.
Stay focused in your family. Don't be just a molecule who will just decompose. Stay together.
I am Flavia Luanga. I'm the Human Resources Director for Airtel Uganda. Just been through the roundtable discussion on, what is the importance of doing more than one international languages. And we are doing this at Alliance Française. Personally, I believe it's important to know more than one international language. Obviously, most of us speak English, so because it's really known worldwide, pretty much most people will be, English speaking. And personally, I choose, French because it's equally, largely spoken on the African continent, and so we have the, the Anglophone countries, then we also have the Francophone countries. And working at Airtel Uganda, we do have, countries that we operate in Africa, over 13 countries in Africa, and you could say almost 50% of those countries are Francophone countries. So I see there's a lot of value in learning more than one language. And like I said, I will speak more from my point of view, which is to learn the French language. And at a point, we go to a situation where, the different countries would always reach out to each other to get talent for specific roles in their countries. Because, there are many reasons, but one of them being that, the roles are scarce in the specific country. So many people reached out to us from other Francophone speaking countries and other countries which are Anglophone, but Francophone especially, I felt hurt because I believe we have very good talent at Airtel Uganda, and we do have good talent in Uganda. So with the opportunity of knowing the French language and the fact that you're already a professional, it adds so much more to your life. So because you will find that if you have so many people who have the capability, how does the employer choose you from the next person? I think French language is a key differentiator. And like again, I said, I'm speaking about Airtel per se, because this is the opportunity I saw. And once I saw that opportunity and I realized, oops, our professionals do not speak French, then that's when we approached Alliance Française, and for 5 years now they've come through, and we've structured some French classes at the place of work. So we have a stream of people coming through at different levels and trying to learn the language. So at least I want my people to be prepared. I want them to be ready, so that when these kind of opportunities come, that they end up to be the preferred, candidates for the jobs, because they already know English and they know it very well. But then, and they're professionals, they're very good at can't speak French, and the opportunities are there. And I've sent some, some of my people to the French-speaking countries, but the ones where I've been able to send them are the ones where, there's at least a balance of both French and English. So I've been able to send people to Seychelles, I even have a finance director in Seychelles today, Ugandan, who didn't know for this person to go. They didn't go as a financial controller, and today they're a finance director. I've also sent people to Rwanda, and as you probably already know, Rwanda is also now really picking up on the English. So it's important to have at least two national or multinational, international languages. So that's the opportunity I see.
My name is Bujingo Don Patrick. I work with Aloysia Organic Natural Health Products as the Managing Director. And I also work with Makerere University Business School as a lecturer of marketing and the French language. I think firstly, this roundtable on French and employability for me is an opportunity to give a testimony. I'm a product of the benefit of having studied the French language. So I believe this roundtable discussion gives us room to look at the past, where we are, and the future. So it's a very, very strategic discussion. I did get the passion to study the French language. Firstly, I was exposed to this language rather young, not with much interest from myself, but rather the motivations of my teachers, French bread, things like this after class. But then as I went into the higher levels, I started to see the value of this language, the beauty of the language. So for me, the passion was mainly to see that we could fit into this global village. French is a beautiful language, and knowing the language itself exposes us and the opportunities of the world out there.
Raymond Muhechi is my name. I'm a lawyer and a French student at Alliance Française de Kampala. I'm very much interested in French, and I love the French language because of the opportunities it presents to not only my profession, but also to the people I work with. I'm a lawyer, and my work is mostly into international law, as well as in Uganda. I do private practice in Uganda as well, in addition to the international work I do around the world. And my experience in my international law field has been challenging in the past because of not being able to speak the French language. I've been missing out on several work engagements, and I've also had challenges in some work engagements. Shared some experiences. One I had recently in 2019 in Benin, where I lost a job opportunity with United Nations because I couldn't speak the French language. And when last year I was in France, I was left on a train because I couldn't understand what they were saying on the train, and I missed my stop. So these challenges that I kept facing showed me why I need to learn the French language, why I need to add French to the English language. Not only is it important to my work, but also interacting with the other people around the world. When I saw this program being organized by Alliance Française and the partners on French language and employability, I realized that I must attend this event. Not only is this event going to inspire me to, learning a language requires commitment and inspiration. Not only is this event going to inspire me, but I'll also learn how to maybe to inspire people and also meet the top employers who are going to tell us why the French language is important to them, why they pick out someone with French language as an addition to work in their companies and organizations. And it doesn't matter whatever profession, all professions, engineering, we're seeing journalism, we're seeing the legal practice as well, we're seeing all professions require the French language. And noting that also we're seeing more French countries connecting to East Africa, DRC, Burundi, Rwanda. This program becomes very important for us to really, take on.
I'm Gloria Rodriguez, and I am working with International Organization for Migration. I am the Human HR Resources Officer here in the IOM Uganda. I already mentioned it in the panel or discussion. You see, as International Migration Organization, we are very open to diversity, and our job deploys us in different countries all over the world. So it's important that when you as an IOM staff member get to become an international officer and you're assigned to a certain country and it speaks French, and you have to have that language skills, which is French. And as I mentioned also a while ago, I was surprised that in Africa, the countries speaking French is so many compared to the European part. So that's why we require ourselves to learn a second language or a third language if we can, as much as possible, because you really have to blend in the culture, and language is the key to the culture of the country. So yes, that's why we require them. They have to speak the language where they are supposed to be.
My name is Walimbwa Teddy. I currently work with Stanbic Bank as a consultant in the call center. I've been working so far for 3 years under Stanbic Bank. I'm proudly to be a member of Alliance Française, the French club. It hasn't been long, but I'm proud to be one of the members. I did French part of my university program, but it was a compulsory course because I was studying with the missions of Africa. I didn't interact with the people. I wouldn't get information
from the other speakers. I picked up a lot from the people who are the students who are seated on the floor, and you see there's a lot of opportunity. So the question is, why do I have to learn French? for me, the simple answer is you do not know what you will stumble on. You just don't know. You know, when I hear that, you know, the kind of testimonies that came through, you realize there's, you know, you cannot even put a number to the opportunities. There's so many opportunities. Some we know, some we don't even know, but they are there. So just learn the language.
My name is Magali Losange. I'm the head of courses of Alliance Française Kampala. I would say first of all that was a direct answer to a request we heard a year ago. So a year ago we met with a couple of teachers at Chambogo University, and some of the head teachers asked us, how can you create more awareness on the specific job opportunities offered for people who can speak French? We thought about it. We realized that instead of having French teachers telling them the full story, it would be better for us to meet employers and employees who are already living this idea that with French, you have access to more job opportunities. So this conference was an opportunity to listen directly from the people who hire people speaking French, but also from the people who already speak French and are using this skill for their professional career.
Yes, I think the French language has come in fundamental for me as one, primarily as a French teacher, being a lecturer of the French language in Macquarie University Business School, and also being a marketing lecturer. Now, this helps me fuse the experience that I've seen in the French world, because I had a chance to do my master's in France, in one of the top cosmetics brands in the entire world, called L'Oréal. And for me, this was an experience to see the marketing angle at a global perspective. And at the end of the day, I picked this, experience to share with my students. And how this also now taps into Aloysia Organic is that, we want to tap into this global market. How will you tap into the French market when you do not have any chance to speak the French language, for example? So meaning our products can be able to reach the French-speaking community, the Francophone community in Africa, and this is the future really. Today, this language is becoming an official language in the East African community.
I'll speak, yes, from a human resource, but there's also a business angle that I picked up here. And I was like, okay, this is something I'd never thought about. From a human resource perspective, obviously, like I said, I've seen so many advertisements from the time I started,
such as, of course, French teachers, translators, but they realize that the French can be this little extra touch. So as long as you have a specific education, French will open more doors for you, but it can come along with so many different skills, and it can be used in so many different sectors. So the main goal of this gathering was to inspire and to put a light on all the different opportunities. From the HR managers, I hope what they realize is that there are already a lot of people who can speak French in Uganda. And on my side, the idea was, okay, how can we do more moving forward?
Je m'appelle Flavia Luanga. Je suis un étudiant de langue française depuis apprendre avec l'Alliance française. Mais je parle un peu de la langue française parce que je suis très occupée avec mon travail. I'm Flavia Luanga. I'm a student of the French language. I study at Alliance Française. I speak little, very little of the language.